Welcome to Slate Church Online. We are so glad that you're tuning in today, and we pray that this message will bless you no matter where you're watching from. If this message impacts you today, we would love to hear about it. Send an email to mystory@slatechurch.com.
Everybody doing well? Turn to somebody on your right and your left, give them a high five, say it's good to see you in church. Cool. Well, I wasn't planning on wearing this pink shirt up on the platform, but I forgot that I was wearing it. Ben only thinks it looks good because he has the same shirt. Who wore it better? I'm wearing it right now, so I did. Good to see you. As Pastor Luke introduced me, my name is Brandon Richardson. I'm one of the lead pastors here alongside my wife, Emma, and we pastor alongside Luke and Victoria. And it's awesome to pastor this church. We absolutely love it. We're so thankful for what God is doing in our church. Lots to celebrate in our church, but who knows that what he's done is not all that he's going to do. What God has done through our church is not all that God has up his sleeve, if he has a sleeve, but he actually has a lot more for us here in Waterloo, and we're really excited for everything that he's doing in our church, but we're really looking forward to the future with a lot of hope and a lot of reassurance that God is going to continue to move in just some really incredible ways. We're going to turn tonight to the book of Daniel. Everybody say Daniel. Daniel. We're going to be reading out of a passage of scripture. It's a bit of a long story. I'll give you some of the background as we go. But as you're turning there to Daniel chapter 3, I want to welcome anybody that's here, maybe for the first time. Maybe this is the first time you've ever stepped foot in church. Hopefully through our worship that we just had and everything else that you've experienced here today, people smiling at the door, whatever else, hopefully you've at least gained the idea that we actually mean business, that we actually care about what God is doing here. You know, we don't expect that all of it will translate on the first week, but what we do hope is that the love of God will translate on your first week, and that you'll be able to understand a little bit more about what we're all about. We are a bunch of people that have tried to find satisfaction and hope and guidance and purpose for life in a whole bunch of different areas of life. But we have this thing in common, a lot of us at least, that we have found ultimately that hope belongs with Jesus, that Jesus is the one that brings us hope, that he's the one that brings fulfillment, that brings purpose, and really brings everything that we need into our lives. And so hopefully tonight you get a bit more of a glimpse into who we are as a church, but even more into who Jesus is, all right? So if you didn't bring your Bible, it's going to be on the back. It's not going to be on the back screen because I didn't give you guys my verses. So just follow along with me if you can, okay? If you're taking notes, write down Daniel chapter 3 and read it later, because I'm going to be jumping around a little bit, which is why I just didn't give them my verses. I'm like, truthfully, I don't even know what I'm about to read, all right? We're just going to jump around. I'm going to tell you the story, and we're going to go through it. But I've titled this message tonight, you write this title down, Another in the Fire. There's another in the fire, standing next to me. There's another in the water, holding back the seas. Should I ever need reminding of how good you've been to me? This song comes out of this passage that we're going to, so we sung it earlier tonight. It comes out of this story, and it's quite an incredible story. The nation of Israel has been taken into captivity by a nasty empire called Babylon. Everybody say Babylon. Babylon. Say it with disgust, like Babylon. Say it like they're just like terrible people, like Babylon. All right. They've been taken under captivity by an empire called Babylon. And their king, a guy named King Nebuchadnezzar, which is even more fun to say. Say it, Nebuchadnezzar. It's a fun name. It's a fun name. If you've watched VeggieTales growing up, you'll know that Nebuchadnezzar is a cucumber. And I think that's a great diss anyway, right? Like Nebuchadnezzar is such a cucumber. And he's kind of Yeah, he's not a nice guy. In fact, he's got some pride issues because what he does is he erects a statue of gold that is 90 feet high and 9 feet wide. I mean, I wouldn't be worshiping that thing, but you better believe I'd be over there with a chisel like trying to steal some of this from me and my family. He erects a statue of gold 90 feet high. I can't even imagine how high that is, but it's definitely higher than I am. It's a lot higher, I know. Don't look at me like that. It's at least 16 of me, okay? And it's so high, it's so wide, it's prominent, it's out on these plains, which is just to say there's flat ground and then there's a statue. And King Nebuchadnezzar, basically, he's like, we serve lots of gods here, primarily Baal, blah, blah, blah. And primarily Baal, but listen, we are also going to worship this statue that I've built for the sake of worshiping it. We're not given any indications that there's any real reason why people should worship this, other than King Nebuchadnezzar just thought one day it'd be cool, and people came out into the middle of the desert and started worshiping this thing because he told them to. This is like power gone wrong. Like, I'm just going to get people to do stuff because I want them to do it. And he calls them in, and he calls all of his rulers in, and he calls all of his people in and everything else, and he says, listen, when you hear the sound of the trumpet, the lyre, there's a bunch of other weird instruments that I'm not even going to try to announce. When you hear the drums and the bass guitar and the electric and the keys come in and the synth pads, you're going to bow down and worship that thing. And everybody's like, cool, because we know what happens if we don't. Well, during this time, there was these Israelites that hadn't only come under captivity, but they had worked themselves into the king's heart. And they had actually been promoted over a series of, over a period of time and through a series of events, up right into the point of administrators in this area of Babylon. And so they come and they hear the rules and they go, this is ridiculous. Like, I don't think we're going to do that. And so King Nebuchadnezzar gives all of his rules. And in verse 7 of chapter 3, it says this. It says, therefore, as soon as they heard the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, harp, and all kinds of music, all the peoples, nations, and men of every language fell down and worshiped the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. The bunny, oh, I love the bunny. If you have no clue what just happened, God bless you. You didn't have to live through VeggieTales. There's a lot of us in this room that got taught the Bible from a bunch of fruits and vegetables. Horrified that one of their main characters, it's called VeggieTales, was not even a vegetable, but a fruit. Tom the tomato. Bob the tomato. Sorry, I didn't realize it was still so popular. It says at this time, some astrologers came forward and denounced these Jews. These are the tattletales in the class. Like, hey, did you see that those Jews over there were not bowing down? And it says this, but they said, but there are some Jews whom you set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These are the three guys that had been appointed administrators over this province of Babylon. And these tattletales are saying, listen, they pay no attention to you, O King Nebuchadnezzar. Neither do they serve your gods, nor worship the image of gold that you have set up. And so furious with rage, this arbitrary command that he's given out, he just gets upset. King Nebuchadnezzar brings all these guys in, and he says, listen, guys, are you really not going to worship me? And it says that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in verse 16 replied to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able, everybody say, God is able. God is able. He is able to save us from it. And he will rescue us from your hand, O king. But listen to this. It says, but even if he does not, that is powerful, isn't it? But even if he does not, if you've got but even if it does not attach to your belief, there's nothing that can take you down. They say, but even if he does not, we want you to know, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up. Now listen to this big man tantrum. This guy goes crazy, starts throwing a fit. He says, then Nebuchadnezzar was so furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude towards them changed. Like he's like, you guys are the best, so I'm going to promote you, All of a sudden it changes, and it says he ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual, and then commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and to throw them in the blazing furnace. So get the descriptive language that starts to be used here. So these men wearing their robes, their trousers, their turbans, other clothes, who knows what other clothes they were wearing, other clothes were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. The king's command was so urgent and the furnace so hot that the flames of the fire killed the soldiers who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. This guy is fuming. And then it says, and then these 3 men, firmly tied up, fell into the blazing furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar leapt to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire? And listen, everybody around confirms this. They say, certainly, O king. He said, look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound. That's good stuff. Unbound and unharmed. And the 4th looks like a son of the gods. And this guy must have been like tripping out on something, because immediately he goes, all right, don't serve that gold statue. Now everybody in my kingdom is going to serve the God of these guys immediately after, and all of a sudden now they're serving the God of these 3 men. Amazing what God can do in a moment when we find ourselves in the fire. Come on, let's bow our heads. We're going to pray. And my prayer and hope is that you're going to get something from this tonight. Jesus, thank you so much. You are so good. You are God. We are your children. We come here humbly tonight and just ask that you would speak to our hearts, speak to our minds. May we not leave here the same way that we came in, but may we be filled with even more hope, even more vision, even more strength as we walk out of these doors to bring your good news, the love of Christ, to everybody that we do life with. We pray this in Jesus' name, and everybody said, Amen. Amen. Well, I don't know about you, but I'd probably be a little bit different than these guys in their situation. These guys are pretty stoic, aren't they? They're like, hey, throw us into the fire. It's like they're taunting him. I wouldn't even taunt people like that in just normal day life. Red Rover, no way I was taunting anybody on the schoolyard and telling them to come over. I was a little scared growing up. I was a little bit worried that my bones were gonna break. I was very fragile and thin, and I looked like a skeleton that was walking. And I was scared of a lot of different things growing up. There's no way that I would taunt somebody. One time I taunted somebody was the first time that Emma came and watched me play hockey. And I'm like, babe, watch me and how it's done. I'm a guy. And so she comes and we make this big long drive all the way with my parents, all the way to my game in Gananoque. And Gananoque, if you don't know where that is far away from here. Far away from where I lived at the time. We come to this place and we're lined up against this big brute of a man playing with us boys. And he says to me, you want to fight? And I'm like, no. And then I started commenting on all the things I didn't like about her. I'm like, well, nice laces. He had like yellow laces or something, which is not cool in hockey, apparently. And I said, well, nice laces. He's like, you want to fight? I'm like, no, but like nice bucket guy. And he's like, you want to fight? I didn't take him seriously enough. And then next thing you know, he just takes it, my cage, rips it off my helmet, starts punching me in the face. I end up on the ice like a turtle. And my girlfriend, new girlfriend, is up in the stands just watching me get pummeled on the ice. This is how I defended myself, okay? But there was one time where I was pretty fearful. I went to the Hillsong Conference in New York City. I was going through a difficult time in my life, and I just needed to get away. So I literally told Emma at the time, I said, babe, I got to go. I got to get away. I got to clear my head. She thought it was a good idea, so I drove all the way to New York by myself. I lodged myself there, all the rest. That's what you say when you get a hotel. And I remember being there, and I didn't realize that the actual conference wasn't in New York, but it was in a place called Newark. This is what New York does to trick you. They're like, hey, or this is what Hillsong does to trick you, rather. Like, hey, we're in New York, but really in Newark. Funny joke. I didn't realize that this was actually a place that you've got to be a little more careful. There are places in every city around the world where you've got to be careful. Newark is the place you have to be careful in New York. I didn't realize this, and I just remember, going to conference and just being like, wow, God, you're doing so many great things in my heart, in my mind, in my soul. Thank you for who you are. And I just remember being pumped up, and I'm like, I'm going to work at what God is doing in me by walking home. This is after the night session. It's about 9 o'clock at night. It's already dark. It's pitch black outside, and I decide I'm going to walk 3 kilometers in the middle of the night through Newark to my hotel. What proceeded next was literally, to date, the scariest moments of my life. I was walking along, and one guy yells out of the shadows. He's like, how you doing, white boy? And in my head, I'm thinking, you're white. Like, what are you saying? I keep walking along. Some other guy said, hey, you're looking pretty, boy. And I'm like, at this point, I'm like, just act cool. Act like you're a part of Newark, so... Just like make myself look bigger. I'm like, I'm totally fine. By the end of my walk, I'm walking more like, I kid you not, I pull out my phone in Newark. I got my phone in my pocket. I don't want to pull it all the way out because I know that's also going to get me. Like, I'm just thinking through so many things. I'm like, my iPhone, like, this isn't an iPhone. It's a Motorola Razr from 10 years ago. I swear, But I got it in my pocket with 911 dialed and my thumb ready to press. I was walking through the worst of Newark. I got back to my hotel, and some of the people that I was staying with were like, where were you? We've been worried. What happened? And they had one of the locals with them in their room, and I'm like, well, this is just what happened. And the guy's like, you did what? I'm like, yeah, I'm a man of God. I had a lot of faith, and just decided, God did a lot myself in the I was freaked out of my mind. Fear is a common feeling that we have as human beings. Fear of the fire is something that is universal. And I'm not talking about the fire that these men experienced. I'm not talking about the bonfires that some of you are enjoying now. I'm not talking about that kind of fire. I'm talking about the trials of life are things that we are afraid of in our lives. In fact, we make a life out of making sure that we put up barricade after barricade between us and any type of uncertainty that we might experience in our lives. We walk through things, and what we are hoping is that nothing will crash around us because we are so afraid of being in the fire that we make sure that we do everything that we can to avoid it. We literally make it a full-time job of ourselves to say, you know what, I'm going to avoid everything that makes me uncomfortable. I'm going to set up so many different barriers in the way and stop gaps and insurance funds and all the rest to make sure that me and myself are so distant from any level of unexpectancy or disaster that I can actually foolproof my life and stormproof my life so that I won't have to walk through it. But who knows that all of this is done in vain? There is not a single one of us in this room that has not walked through or been in a fire of some sort. There's not a single person in this room that does not have scars from a life lived here on planet Earth, where we had to interact with other humans that were less than gracious, where we had to interact with maybe relationships that betrayed us, where we had to go into jobs where managers tried to take advantage of us, where we had to work alongside people that didn't really have our backs but portrayed like they did. There's not a single person in this room that has not been through a fire. And so when I compare my response to being up against a fire next to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's response as they're up against a literal fire, I start asking some questions. What is it about my condition that causes me to be so afraid of walking through the fire and walking into disaster zones while Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are just walking around like, you know what? They know something that nobody else does. See, the universal truth that they understood then is still the truth that we can understand now. And it's this: if God is on our side, we do not have to worry, because he literally created everything that could come against us, and he has the power to overturn it at any moment. This is a good truth. I truly believe that God can actually bring more out of your pain than he can your promotion. I don't think it's a truth that it will always take that way. God can use your promotion in whatever area it might be in life, whether you get a new car or a house, or you have more kids, or you just get a breakthrough in your personal life. God can absolutely use promotion, but I think that we fail to realize that sometimes God's working in the pain of our life, God's working in the fire, will actually speak so much louder and so much greater to the people around us that we fail to understand the value in the fire. These men, before they were ever put into the fire, were under fire. Have you ever felt under fire by the people around you? Like whether standing up for your faith, or maybe just choosing to do the right thing, or perhaps having a different opinion than somebody else, or just setting yourself against that odds for whatever reason. Have you ever felt under fire in life? And I remember one junior high retreat that I went to. I was recounting this story to Luke just this past week or the week before. And my dad was leading the junior high group at this time, and they didn't have things like Plan to Protect, and so they didn't need to have leaders in rooms with junior highs. They just let us go into rooms and fight to the death, good luck, kids, I'm gonna go watch sports. And in my room, I had myself and my best friend, and my best friend's brother, and then my best friend's brother's best friend, okay? So it doesn't really matter. But his name was Corey, and I just remember Corey. He was a little rough around the edges, mainly because he chose to be that way. And I remember he showed up at the junior high retreat, and I remember thinking, Dad, don't let me alone in the room with Corey. I just knew. I knew what could happen. I remember really early on, we tied a whole bunch of sheets together and tossed some duffel bags over our railing just to see if we could lower ourselves to the ground. And they tried to force one of us over the railing, both my best friend's older brother and Corey. I remember that it didn't end there, but Corey pulled out of his backpack a airsoft gun, a semi-automatic airsoft gun. And I remember for about half an hour being in a corner behind a cot, just being shot at with an airsoft gun as we pleaded for our lives. Being under fire is not much fun. But when you're under fire, you are under review. When you're under fire, you're under review by all the people around you. You realize that when you're under fire, it's actually the greatest opportunity to speak about who you are and what you believe about God and what you believe that God can do through you. Nobody really cares what you're like on your best day. We just welcomed a little baby girl into our lives, right? And of course, people are happy and excited for us, but what other reaction are we gonna have on the day that our child comes into the world? Oh, we gotta deal with this again, on Instagram, look at us, just more work added to our lives, Nobody says that. It's the best day of your life. You're so excited. You're thrilled to be welcoming another child in the world, and everybody around you expects you to be. And that's why when you're going through good things in life, it's actually not, and just going from strength to strength to strength, there's often not an urgency within you to tell people about Jesus, because you're going how from this vantage point am I going to share with them that God is so good when they're going through hell and I'm just up on the mountaintop and it just looks like I'm floating because I am, and really people don't have a whole lot of interest when you're floating. But when you're under fire, people put you under review. They want to know what you're doing. They don't want to know how you're going to behave. They want to know how you're going to act. They want to know how you're going to react. And they have their eyes on you because they're much more interested in what you're going to be like when you're under fire than when you're up on the mountaintop. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego have their moment before the entire nation of Babylon. And they have their opportunity to disavow the thing that they had believed in up until this point. Everybody knew who they believed in. Everybody understood what these men stood for. But the truth that they were faced with in this moment was whether or not they were going to stand firm in what they knew to be true, or they were going to compromise because they were under pressure. When you're under fire, you are under review, and it's an opportunity to show the people around you whether or not the faith that lives inside of you is greater than the circumstances that you're going through. If you think that there's no purpose for the fire that you find yourself in, there's no purpose for the pain that you're going through, there's no purpose for everything that's going on, you need to know that sometimes God will have you walk through these things, or he'll be with you through these things, so that you can set an example for everybody around you of what it looks like to not just have faith when things are going well, but what it looks like to have steadfast faith when everybody expects you to give up and throw in the towel and go to another thing, because that's exactly what the world does when they themselves are going through things. It's what a lot of us have gone through just to end up in this space tonight. We've tried all the different things. We come up to this fire and we go, well, that didn't work. I'm going to try something else. Self-help books, maybe I'll try that. And then that didn't work. And you go, well, maybe I'll talk to some friends, and that didn't work. And all of a sudden, little by little, we begin to find ourselves in the presence of God, and we go, oh my goodness, this works not only when I'm on the mountaintop, but this actually works when I'm under fire. And the conviction that we have that God will be with us in the fire is often all the world needs to see to convince them that what lives inside of us is actually real and alive and true to what we have proclaimed it to be, because it actually lasts through the things that other people aren't getting through. I find it interesting that these men actually had different names. I don't know if you picked it up ever reading this story, for those of you that have read this story before, but Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were these men's Babylonian names. And they meant, Shadrach meant command of Aku, under the command of Aku, a god, a deity of the time. Meshach was a name that meant who is as Aku is. It's a riddle of sorts that is begging the question of Aku, the deity, and it's saying, who is as Aku is? Abednego was actually, the meaning of his name meant the servant of the god Nebo. And these men had these labels and these names placed over them as they came into Babylonian captivity to basically circumvent the beliefs that they once had and to replace them with new beliefs within the area that they found themselves in. But their names really meant, Shadrach was Hananiah, which means God is gracious. Meshach, who is as Aku is, his real name was Mishael, and it means who is like God. Abednego, his real name was Azariah, and it means God has helped. Isn't it interesting that when one label meant servant of the god Nebo, the opposite meaning was, no, I'm not just a servant, but God has actually helped me. One says, who is Aku? And the other one said, who is like our God? Another command of Aku, but Hananiah meant God is actually gracious. I'm not under the command of what you're under command. I think that everybody would have expected, based on what had been proclaimed over these men's life, based on the region they found themselves in, based on the context that they were a part of, and based on the trials that were before them, that they would give into all the things that everyone else had given into. And these men stand up and say, no, my God is still gracious, my God is still good, my God is still who he says he is, and my God still lives inside of me. And so you can try to throw whatever junk you want at me, but I will be the same person after the fire as I was before the fire, because my God is more real than those you serve. I love that these men proclaim. And they're saying like, hey, now's your chance to give up. Now's your chance to throw in the towel. Now's your chance to just give into everything that is before you and really surrender yourself to what we want to surrender you to surrender to. And these men stand up and they say, no, the fire is before us, but our God is able. Our God is able to rescue us from this fire. How absurd does this sound? I mean, for those of us that have watched VeggieTales and read this before and have sung the song that we sung earlier and understand the lyrics and where it comes from, we're always on the other side of the story, looking at it and being like, of course, God's about to save them from the fire. But can you place yourself in the context of these men actually about to be thrown into the fire? They have no previous experiences to lead them to believe that God is actually going to do this, but they do have information that God has worked in lives before them. You know, so often, when talking to so many of you and when I'm bearing all of my burdens to people that I talk to, these words come out of our lips. You know, well, that makes sense for that situation, but here's how my situation is different. So often when we're walking through fires, it's like, well, you know, that fire was 7 times hot. Well, the fire that I'm walking through is about 12 times hotter. You know, that one was 7 times hotter. Yeah, mine was at least 14 times hotter, you know. Well, that flame was bigger, yeah, but my flame, the thing I'm going through, it's this big, you know. And we're constantly trying to make excuses for why what we're going through is actually different. And could God actually continue to work? I love that they didn't actually have a precedent set for them of whether or not God was going to release them from the fire. There's no reason to believe, previous up until this point, that God is going to rescue them. But these men say, no, I'm not going to base it on whether or not I know somebody else has walked through this. I'm not going to base this on whether or not I've read a portion of scripture that immediately is relevant to what I'm going through. I'm not going to base it on all this stuff. I'm going to look at the character of God that has existed for many years before me and ask myself, does God care about my well-being? Yes. Does God care about me serving him? Yes. Has God stepped in the past in unexpected ways? Yes. Then why couldn't he do for me what he did for them? Why couldn't God do for me in the future what I've seen him do in the past? You know, I'm so thankful that I went through some of my worst experiences in a time period where my parents actually didn't rush to go talk to somebody about what I was going through. I've talked to, and I don't want to go too deep into it today, just for the sake of time, but at the age of 13, I started having crazy mental things going on in my head. I started talking to myself, but not just talking to myself, but I started making deals with this voice in my head. And there'd be these things at the age of 13, I'd be falling asleep in bed, and there'd be this voice that popped into my head. And it would say, you know, hey, Brandon, you should read 40 chapters of the Bible tonight. And if you don't, your parents are going to die. Is that a deal? And I remember as a 13-year-old kid, I'd go, no deal. And I'd be struggling in my heart and my mind, and the room was dark, and my brother was just across the way, and I just remember all this was going on inside of me. And I go, no. And all of a sudden, it was like the subconscious said, yes, deal. And then I'd spend literally the next few hours trying to read 40 chapters of the Bible so that my parents wouldn't die. I would go through these things where all of a sudden a voice would come into my head and it would say, hey, you know, you need to do this in order for you not to, and this is real life stuff that I went through. In order for you not to stab your brother in the middle of the night in your sleep, you need to do this. And I'm going, what in the world? And I'm going, no deal. And then all of a sudden, deal came into my head. And I would do whatever it told me to do, and I would enact these things. This voice would come into my head, and it would say, clean your entire room and make it so clean that there's no dust anywhere. And I'd remove all this stuff from my closet. Ask my brother. About once a week, I would remove everything out of our room. I'd put it back into our room and make sure there wasn't dust on anything so that nothing would happen to the people around me. I was scared of the fire. I was terrified of the fire. I've learned since from talking to a therapist and talking to my wife who's a psychotherapist and listening to people with OCD that it was OCD. It was insane. I was under so much pressure, and I still remember turning 16 and thanking God and bawling my eyes out because my parents didn't die based on a deal that I didn't make when I was 13 years old. But listen to this. I don't know how I would have gotten through it had I just taken on the label that there's no way or no hope in this earth that I would get through it. I don't know what it would have been like if I had taken on a label like these guys had it done and say, well, now you have mental health and I am mental health. I don't know how I would have gone through it had I just said, I am tribulation. I am in the fire. I am in the midst of this. But you know what I did is every single night I would call out to my dad and I would yell, Dad, Dad, Dad. And he would come into my room. And my brother had no clue what was happening during this time of life. It's probably the first time he's ever heard this. My dad would come into my room literally for a year straight, come beside my bed, and he would put his hand on my head, and he'd say, "You're not alone. You're not alone." But guess what? Next night would come, new deal. No. Yes. Dad. I'd come into the room. My dad would put his hand on my head. "You're not alone." Wow. Okay. Go out of the room. Next night, new deal. No. Yes. Dad. After a year of doing this, my dad coming into my room, putting his hand on my head, it was like a switch went off. And all of a sudden, I didn't have another thought like that again. I think we live in a world that is under siege right now. There's a book title called The Battlefield of the Mind, and I don't think the battlefield in our world today is in a battlefield that is external. I don't think we're in danger of somebody invading Canada tomorrow, but we are certainly in a battlefield, and we are under fire in our minds. And if there's one thing I know to be true, it's that you're not alone. There's another in the fire. In the midst of your darkness, in the midst of what you don't think anybody else can understand, in the midst of what your mind is going through, in the midst of all the tricks that you think are being played in your mind, in the midst of the turmoil of your soul, God is greater. God is bigger. God is able. And even if he doesn't, he's still God, and the enemy's still going to lose. After a year, this was 14. I remember 2 years of just being free. But on that 16th birthday, bawling my eyes out because I was reminded of how good God was, and that these things in my mind they're not real. God's able to work through those things. And I think sometimes people look at pastors like Luke, Victoria, Emma, and I, and you just assume, well, you guys are able to do that. You guys are living a great life. You guys are fine. You guys are good. You know, from 13 until I was 24, nothing. And then we had our little baby Kensington. And there's a string of nights where I'd lost so much sleep that I was getting a little bit delusional. And all of a sudden, a voice popped into my head. "See that little baby over there? This is what's going to happen if you don't do this. Deal or no deal?" No, this isn't how this one's going. You see, I've learned before that if it's just going to be me and you, I'm going to lose this battle. If it's just going to be me and my mind versus whatever is trying to get into my mind, I'm going to lose this battle. No. It's not me and you. This is me, God, and you. And the moment that I bring God into the picture of everything that I'm going through is the moment that that voice loses, and the voice inside of your head loses, and the voice in that side of the head of your friend that's going through loses, and God wins. Because guess what? There is another in the fire. It's not just you. You're not alone. You don't have to give in to the voices in your head, because God reigns victorious. God reigns victorious. What once had you bound is now fallen off, because the presence of the God will burn brighter than any fire you'll go through. God is bigger. Why don't we stand up? I want to finish with this story. God making himself known in darkness is not a new thing, is it? That's why as a church, we refuse to allow ourselves to just believe these things and not actually live them out. You might know 5 weeks ago, and I don't know if the person's here that the story pertains to, but it's pretty generic. 5 weeks ago, we decided to insert ourselves into the proverbial darkness at St. Patrick's Day. You remember this. We went out, we handed out 10,000 Timbits, 12,000 water bottles. And we were out there, and it hit the news, and on different news, Facebooks and social media, they picked it up, and all of a sudden there's people commenting, why are these people wasting their money? Christians commenting, how does this translate into lives saved? And what are you wasting your money for? And all the different craziness that came. Why didn't you give the money to the homeless shelter? As you know, the next day we actually got a letter back thanking us for the money we gave to the homeless shelter 2 weeks prior. Like, this is craziness, but we decided, you know what? It's time to stop running from the fires that our culture is going through, and it's time to stand with them as representatives of Christ in our city and saying, you know what? While we have another in our fire because we know Jesus, we're going to stand in the gap for you. We live in this city with you. We're going to stand in the gap. We are the other in the fire. And we're at St. Patrick's Day. And all of a sudden, a few different people start showing up to church. Some of you are here today because of St. Patrick's Day. One girl in particular shows up because of what we did on St. Patrick's Day. And just last week on our baptismal Sunday, not only gave her life to Christ, but got baptized. Here's the message I want to leave with you about another in the fire. Is that you might be in a very real fire right now. You might be fearing the fire that you're going to go into. You might be fearing the fact that you're under fire right now. But I want to let you know that our God is in the fire. He's with us. He's very present. He knows exactly what you're going through. He doesn't want you to be bound. He doesn't want you walking around alone. You've never been alone. He will never leave you. He will never forsake you. God has your number. He knows the hairs that are on your head. He knows the situations that you've gone through. He knows what you're battling and you can't seem to explain to anybody around you. God is present in what you are going through. And our opportunity is to receive that and realize it and to be able to make such an impact because we've walked through it that all of a sudden the king is saying, you know what, let's serve their God because it seems to be working. All of a sudden people are starting to say, I need to get to Slate because some reason those guys are getting freed up. For some reason they're going through the same stuff I am, but during this crazy time at work, they're walking through with peace. They're walking through with victory. It's like they're walking through and they have two people helping them because guess what there is? We have another in the fire.
Thanks so much for watching. If you were impacted by the message today, you can send us an email at mystory@slatechurch.com. And if you'd like to learn more, you can fill out one of our online Connect cards. We would love to see you at one of our Sunday services. And make sure to stay connected by following us on any of our social media, including Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.